This is our second open response, or what they are now calling constructed response, on the 2019 MCAS, and it has 4 parts. And as I mentioned before, remember when you have open responses like this with 4 parts, the expectation is that you show all of your work. Okay, and that's highlighted right in the question. It says, enter your answer and your work or explanation in the space provided. So they want to see the steps. Okay, you can't just do this all mentally. Okay, you need to show all of your work. Okay, so I recommend that you always read all the information given to you. So it says that we have a line and a parabola are graphed on a coordinate plane. The equation of the line and the equation of the parabola are shown in the table. Okay, so the line is y equals negative 3x plus 5. Parabola is y equals negative x squared plus 2x plus 1. Okay, so part A is, what is the value of y for the line? That's important, so we know what equation we're using when x equals negative 4. Okay, so this is going to be a lot of this problem is going to be order of operations. So let's first start off by writing the equation of our lines. We have y equals negative 3x plus 5. And we want to know what the value of y is when x equals negative 4. So that means what we're going to do is substitute in negative 4 in for x, and we are just going to simplify. Now remember, when we do order of operations, we have to multiply before we can add. So that means a negative 3 times a negative 4 gives me a positive 12. And then when I add 5, I get y equals 17. So this is your answer. Okay, but you cannot just type in y equals 17. Even though it's correct, they will not give you credit for it. You need to type out all of it. I know it's a pain, and I know it's not fun, but this typing all of this is what's going to give you full credit for this question. Okay, so let's take a look at part B. Okay, again, same equations, but this time we want to know the value of y for the parabola. Okay, so this time our equation is going to be y equals negative x squared plus 2x plus 1. And when we were solving for y, we have to substitute in the negative 4 for every x that is listed, okay? Not just the first one. Again, order of operations, we do exponents before we multiply, divide, add, or subtract. So, and notice how the negative in front of the x is not in parentheses. Okay, it is x that is negative 4. I put the parentheses around it to signify that this negative here is part of the equation and separate from the negative sign of the value of 4, or the value of x. So that stays, that negative stays, and negative 4 squared is going to give me a positive 16, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, and with the negative in front of it, it is going to become negative 16. Okay, that's the only time you'll have a negative answer when you're squaring a number, is if you have the negative in front of the x. Then I can then multiply. So after exponents, we're going to multiply. 2 times negative 4 gives me a negative 8. And then I'm going to add 1. Now, if I bring down the negative 8, this is Now again, you didn't necessarily have to put parentheses around the -8. I did it so that way you can, it separates the addition sign, which is a mathematical operation, versus the negative for the value of 8. So now we follow our left to right rule and we add left to right. So a -16 plus a -8 is going to give me a -24 if my mental math is correct. And it is. Then we're going to add 1. So my final answer is going to be, for part B, a -23. Okay? And again, you need to type out all of this to get full credit on the open responses. Just writing in the box y equals 23 will not give, you will not get credit for this, because it specifically states to enter your answer and your work. Now it also says or explanation. Well, what's the difference between explanation and your work is that you would have to explain, you would have to write a sentence for each step. So your first sentence would be, I substituted -4 in for the x squared and the x. Then I squared -4 to get 16, and I multiplied 2 times -4 to get -8. From there, I added -16 plus -8 to get a -24, and then my final step would have been to add 1 to -4 to get -23. So whether you show all your work or you give a full sentence for each step you did, you have to do one or the other. You can't just put y equals -23 and expect to get full credit for this. Okay. Part C. Okay, so part C, it says the line and the parabola intersect at 2 points. The distance in units between the 2 points is represented by this expression, which is the square root of 4 minus 1 squared plus -7 minus 2 squared. It says simplify the expression to determine the distance in units between the 2 points. Show or explain how you got your work. Okay, so what we need to remember here is how we subtract negatives. So if I have the square root 4 minus 1 squared plus -7 minus 2 squared. Okay, so again, do parentheses first, then exponents. So 4 minus 1 is 3. And a -7 minus 2, you can, whether you learned how to add the opposite or keep, change, flip, this is going to become -7 plus a -2, which is therefore going to give me a -9 squared. You can also think of this parentheses as starting on the number line at -7 and then subtracting 2 more. So you're becoming more -2 more units. So that's how we get the -9. Okay. From here, then we do exponents. So parentheses, parentheses and exponents. 3 squared is 9, because 3 times 3 is 9. And a -9 times a -9 gives me a positive 81. And of course, our last step to simplify this expression is going to be the square root of 9 plus 81, which gives me 90. Now, for CP students, I would leave your answer just like this. You might get partial credit because unfortunately, because the question says to simplify, technically this square root of 90 is not simplified yet. So if you remember how to simplify square roots by factoring them into perfect squares, then that is definitely something that you need to do because this is not fully simplified. So when we're trying to simplify a square root, we're trying to pull out as many perfect squares as possible. Okay, and we do that by factoring. So this is the same as the square root of 9 times the square root of 10, because 9 times 10 is 90. Now, the square root of 9, we know what that is. That is 3. That is a perfect square. The square root of 10 is not. The square root of 10 can only be broken down into 2 times 5, and those are both prime numbers. So therefore, this is the simplest answer that you could get. But again, if you were only to get to here, that's okay. You would still get partial credit for this part of the problem, okay? But if you remember how to factor and simplify square roots, this is the final answer that they're looking for full credit. Okay. Last part.